Imagine waking up, not to the familiar blue of Earth's sky, but to a soft, muted glow of rust-colored light filtering through a reinforced window. Morning on Mars does not arrive with birdsong or the gentle sway of trees. Instead, it comes quietly, carried on a thin atmosphere where sunlight feels distant, as if it has traveled a very long way just to reach you. Inside the habitat, everything is calm. There is a steady hum in the background, life support systems working silently, circulating air, balancing pressure, maintaining a fragile bubble of existence in a world that was never meant for human life. And yet, here you are, alive, breathing, existing on a planet over 200 million kilometers away from home. At first, it might seem almost impossible. Mars is cold, far colder than most places on Earth. Its atmosphere is thin, made mostly of carbon dioxide, offering no breathable air and very little protection from radiation. The surface is dry, barren, and exposed to extremes that would overwhelm the human body in moments. And still, humans can survive here. Not because Mars has become more like Earth, but because we have learned, slowly, carefully, to adapt ourselves to it. Survival on Mars begins with something simple, something we rarely think about: air. On Earth, breathing is effortless. It is automatic, invisible. We never pause to consider how perfectly balanced our atmosphere is, a delicate mixture of oxygen and nitrogen maintained by oceans, forests, and time itself. But on Mars, every breath must be created. Inside the habitat, oxygen does not come from the sky. It is produced, engineered. Machines carefully split carbon dioxide molecules, separating oxygen from carbon, a quiet, continuous process that transforms an unbreathable environment into something livable. Water, too, is not something you can simply turn on. There are no rivers flowing nearby, no rain tapping against the windows. Instead, water is extracted from beneath the surface, locked in frozen soil and ancient ice deposits that have remained untouched for millions of years. It is collected, purified, recycled, used again and again. Nothing is wasted. And perhaps that is one of the first lessons Mars teaches. On Earth, resources often feel abundant, so abundant that we forget their value. But here, every drop of water, every molecule of oxygen is something you become deeply aware of. You begin to notice what was once invisible: the quiet rhythm of breathing, the subtle comfort of warmth, the presence of air around your skin. Even gravity feels different. Mars has only about 1/3 of Earth's gravity, which means your body moves more lightly, almost as if the planet is gently releasing its hold on you. At first, it feels freeing, but over time you realize something deeper. Your muscles, your bones, your entire body are shaped by the world you live in. On Mars, survival is not just about building machines or habitats. It is about understanding how deeply connected we are to the environment that surrounds us, and how, when that environment changes, we must change with it. As the Martian morning slowly brightens, you might find yourself standing near the window, looking out at a vast, silent landscape that stretches far beyond the horizon. There is no movement out there, no sound, no life, at least none that we can easily see. And yet, inside this small, carefully constructed space, life continues. Not easily, not effortlessly, but deliberately. Every breath, every drop of water, every moment of warmth is something that exists because it is maintained, because it is understood, because it is protected. And as you stand there, watching the stillness of Mars, you may begin to feel something unexpected. Not isolation, but awareness. A quiet realization of how extraordinary it is that life, fragile, complex, and persistent, can exist even here. and how survival, in its simplest form, is not just about enduring a harsh world, but about learning how to live within it. As the day on Mars gently unfolds, you begin to notice something subtle, yet profound. Life here does not exist on Mars. It exists within carefully created spaces. Outside, the planet remains unchanged, cold, silent, unforgiving. But inside the habitat, a different world is quietly taking shape. The walls around you are more than just structure. They are protection, shielding you from radiation that constantly streams through the thin Martian atmosphere. On Earth, we are protected by a magnetic field and a thick blanket of air. On Mars, those natural defenses are almost entirely absent. So, instead, humans build their own. Layers of dense material, sometimes even Martian soil itself, are used to absorb and deflect harmful radiation. In some designs, habitats are placed partially underground, not for comfort, but for survival. It's a quiet reminder that on Mars, safety is something you must create, not something the planet provides. Inside, the air feels steady, the temperature controlled, the environment stable. But maintaining this balance is a continuous process. Pressure must be regulated carefully. Too low, and the human body cannot function properly. Too high, and the structure itself is put at risk. On Earth, atmospheric pressure wraps around us gently, something we never notice. On Mars, it becomes something you are always aware of, even if only in the background. And then there is food. At first, it might seem like the greatest challenge of all. There are no fields stretching into the distance, no oceans full of life, no natural ecosystems ready to support human needs. So, instead, food must be grown. Inside controlled environments, small patches of green begin to appear. Plants growing under artificial light, roots anchored not in rich soil, but in carefully balanced nutrient solutions. This is not farming as we know it. It is something more precise, more intentional. Every leaf, every stem, every harvest is the result of careful monitoring, light levels, water content, mineral balance. And yet, despite the technology surrounding it, there is something deeply familiar about it too. The presence of plants, a quiet connection to Earth. Because beyond providing food, plants do something even more essential. They help regenerate oxygen, working alongside machines to sustain the delicate balance of life inside the habitat. In a place where everything is engineered, they bring a sense of something natural, something alive. Over time, you begin to understand that survival on Mars is not about replacing nature completely. It is about recreating just enough of it to support life. Small ecosystems, carefully maintained, existing within walls that separate life from a lifeless world. And as you move through these spaces, you may start to feel a subtle shift in perspective. On Earth, we are part of a vast, self-sustaining system. The air, the water, the food, all connected in ways we rarely think about. But here, every connection is visible. Nothing is hidden. You see how water cycles through the system, how air is processed and renewed, how energy flows from solar panels into every part of daily life. It becomes clear that survival is not made of separate pieces, but of systems working together, quietly, continuously. And perhaps in this controlled and carefully balanced environment, there is something unexpectedly calming, a sense of order, a rhythm. Everything has a purpose. Everything has a place. There is very little excess, very little waste. And in that simplicity, there is a kind of clarity that is often missing on Earth. As the artificial lights inside the habitat slowly shift to mimic the soft transition of evening, you might pause for a moment, watching the gentle glow reflecting off metallic surfaces, feeling the steady hum of systems around you. It is not the same as a sunset on Earth. There are no colors spreading across a vast sky, no clouds catching the last light of the day, but still, it is a kind of evening. A quiet signal that another day of survival, carefully managed, thoughtfully maintained, is coming to a close. And in that moment, you may realize something simple, yet profound. On Mars, life does not happen by accident. It happens because every detail, no matter how small, is understood and cared for. As days on Mars slowly turn into weeks, and weeks into something that begins to feel like routine, another kind of adaptation begins. Not in the machines, not in the habitat, but within you. At first, the differences are subtle. You notice how easily your body moves, how each step feels lighter, almost effortless, as if the ground beneath you is gently letting go. Mars has only a fraction of Earth's gravity, and while that may sound like a quiet advantage, your body understands it differently. On Earth, gravity is constant. It shapes your bones, strengthens your muscles, guides the flow of blood through your veins. It is an invisible force, but one your body depends on. Here, without that familiar pull, your muscles begin to relax in ways they were never meant to. Your bones, no longer carrying the same weight, start to lose density over time. It does not happen all at once. There is no sudden change, just a slow, quiet shift, a reminder that the human body is always listening to the environment around it and adjusting. To stay healthy, movement becomes essential. Exercise is no longer something optional, something you do for strength or routine. It becomes part of survival itself. Inside the habitat, carefully designed equipment helps recreate resistance, giving your muscles something to push against, your bones something to support. There is a rhythm to it, not rushed, not intense, but steady, consistent, necessary. In a way, it mirrors the quiet discipline of everything else on Mars. Nothing is left to chance. Even your own body becomes something you must actively care for, with an awareness that grows a little deeper each day. And then there is the mind. At first, the silence of Mars can feel peaceful. No wind in the trees, no distant sounds of cities, no constant background of life moving all around you, just stillness. But over time, that stillness becomes something else, a kind of emptiness. The landscape outside does not change much. The horizon remains the same. The colors, soft reds, deep browns, muted golds, stretch endlessly without variation. There are no oceans, no forests, no familiar signs of life to rest your eyes on. And the distance from Earth, though invisible, is always there. Communication takes time. Messages do not arrive instantly. There is a delay, sometimes minutes long, between sending a thought and receiving a reply. It's a small detail, but one that slowly reshapes how connection feels. Conversations become less immediate, more deliberate. You begin to choose your words more carefully, not because you have to, but because time itself asks you to. And in that space between messages, there is room for reflection, for stillness, for thoughts that might never surface in the constant motion of life on Earth. To support the mind, just as the body, the habitat becomes more than a place of survival. It becomes a place of comfort. Soft lighting that mimics the rhythms of day and night, small personal spaces filled with familiar objects, recorded sounds, perhaps the gentle hum of rain or distant ocean waves quietly playing in the background. Simple things, but deeply meaningful. Because survival is not only about staying alive, it's about feeling human, about holding on to a sense of identity, even in a place that feels so far removed from everything familiar. And slowly, over time, you begin to notice something unexpected. Mars no longer feels entirely foreign. Not because it has changed, but because you have. Your body has learned new rhythms. Your mind has found new ways to rest in silence. Your awareness has expanded to include things you once never noticed. Breath, movement, time, connection. All of it becomes clearer, more intentional. As you sit quietly at the end of another Martian day, perhaps looking out once more at the vast, unmoving landscape, you may feel a sense of calm that is difficult to describe. Not excitement, not wonder, but something softer, a quiet acceptance that even here, in a place so distant, so different, life continues to find its balance. And so do you. As life on Mars settles into something that feels almost familiar, you begin to notice another quiet foundation beneath everything: energy. On Earth, energy is often invisible to us. It flows through wires, powers our homes, lights our cities. So constant, so reliable, that we rarely stop to think about it. But on Mars, energy is something you feel, almost like a presence. It arrives each day with the sunlight, spreading softly across the dusty surface, touching the wide arrays of solar panels that stretch outward from the habitat. The light here is different, dimmer than on Earth, filtered through a thin atmosphere, often softened further by fine particles of dust suspended in the air. And yet, it is enough. Slowly, steadily, that sunlight is captured, converted into electricity, stored carefully for the long, cold hours of night. Nothing is taken for granted. Every system inside the habitat, the air you breathe, the water you drink, the warmth you feel, depends on this quiet flow of energy. And because of that, life begins to follow a rhythm shaped not by convenience, but by availability. During the day, when energy is more abundant, activities become a little more active. Machines run more freely, systems operate with greater flexibility. But as evening approaches, there is a gentle shift. Lights soften, non-essential systems slow down. Energy is conserved, not out of fear, but out of understanding. It is a rhythm that feels almost natural, even though it is guided by technology. A rhythm of gathering, storing, and using. And then there are the storms. Mars is known for its vast dust storms, some small and passing, others so large they can cover the entire planet. When they arrive, they do not come with thunder or rain. There is no dramatic sound, just a gradual dimming of the light. The sky turns from soft orange to a deeper, muted shade. The horizon fades, and the sunlight, the very source of energy, becomes weaker. Inside the habitat, everything continues as before, but with a quiet awareness. Energy reserves are monitored more closely. Systems become more conservative, not as a reaction, but as part of a plan already understood. Because on Mars, uncertainty is not something you eliminate, it is something you prepare for. And perhaps in that preparation, there is a deeper lesson. Back on Earth, we often expect stability. We build systems assuming consistency, rarely considering how fragile that stability can be. But here, survival is built on flexibility, on the ability to adjust, to respond, to move gently with changing conditions. Even time itself feels slightly different. A day on Mars, called a sol, is just a little longer than a day on Earth, about 24 hours and 39 minutes. It is a small difference, but over time it becomes noticeable. Clocks are adjusted, schedules shift. The rhythm of sleep and wakefulness slowly aligns with this new cycle. And in that subtle change, you begin to feel how deeply connected we are to the passage of time. not just as numbers on a clock, but as something the body senses and follows. As another evening settles in, the habitat grows quieter. Energy is stored, systems hum softly in the background, the artificial lights dim, mimicking a night that outside feels vast and endless. And beyond the walls, Mars remains unchanged, silent, still, watching. But inside, there is warmth, there is light, there is life continuing its careful rhythm in a place where it should not exist, yet does. And as you rest, carried gently by this balance of energy, time, and intention, you may begin to understand something subtle. Survival is not only about strength or resilience, it is about harmony. A quiet alignment between what you need and what the world can give, even when that world is as distant and as delicate as Mars. As time continues to pass on Mars, what once felt unfamiliar begins to soften into something else. Not quite comfort, but a quiet sense of belonging. The routines you follow each day, checking systems, tending plants, conserving energy, caring for your body, no longer feel like tasks. They feel like a rhythm. A way of living that is slower, more aware, more intentional. And in that rhythm, something deeper begins to emerge. You start to see that survival on Mars is not built on a single breakthrough or one powerful piece of technology. It is built on balance. A balance between air and pressure, between energy and consumption, between isolation and connection, between the human body and the environment that shapes it. Every system depends on another. Every action carries meaning. Nothing exists alone. And perhaps for the first time, this becomes completely clear. Because on Earth, life is supported by vast, invisible systems, oceans regulating climate, forests renewing air, ecosystems maintaining balance. They are so large, so complex, that we rarely see them as a whole. But here, on Mars, those same ideas exist in miniature, contained, visible, understandable. You can trace the path of a single drop of water, from extraction to use to recycling and back again. You can follow the journey of a breath, from machine to lungs to the quiet systems that restore it. And in doing so, you begin to understand something that once felt distant. Life is not just something that happens. It is something that is sustained, carefully, continuously, together. Outside the habitat, Mars remains vast and silent, its surface untouched by human presence, stretching endlessly beneath a pale sky. There are no signs of the life you carry within these walls, no sound, no movement, no warmth. And yet, inside, there is everything. Light, air, water, growth, thought. A small, fragile world existing against all odds. But perhaps it is not so different from Earth after all. Because even on our home planet, life depends on balance just as delicate, systems just as interconnected, resources just as finite. The difference is, on Earth, we often forget. Here, you cannot. And maybe that is the quiet gift of Mars. Not just the challenge of surviving in a distant world, but the clarity it brings to the one we came from. As you sit in the stillness of another Martian night, the soft hum of the habitat surrounding you, you might close your eyes for a moment and imagine Earth. Blue oceans, moving clouds, the sound of wind through trees, the effortless rhythm of life that surrounds it. So familiar, so abundant, and yet now seen with new understanding. Because after living here, you begin to realize something simple but profound. Survival is never guaranteed. Not on Mars, not even on Earth. It is something that must be cared for, protected, respected, gently, consistently, over time. And perhaps that is the lesson Mars offers us, not through words, but through silence, that life, wherever it exists, is a balance, a delicate, beautiful balance. And the more we understand it, the more carefully we learn to live within it. So tonight, as you rest, whether beneath the distant sky of Mars or the familiar one above Earth, you might carry this quiet thought with you, that every breath you take, every drop of water you use, every moment of warmth you feel, is part of something extraordinary, something fragile, something worth protecting. And in that awareness, there is a kind of peace,